Hello students, today we are going to discuss how nationalism developed in Europe. However, before we do that, let us understand what nationalism is. Nationalism is a sentiment, love and pride for one's own nation. It is basically a 19th century concept. This sentiment resulted in the development of the nation-states in Europe. Now, let us find out what a nation is and how nation-states are formed. A nation-state is a geopolitical space with defined geographical boundaries, inhabited by people who have a common history, tradition, language, culture, religion, and so forth. According to the French philosopher Ernst Renan, a nation-state is a large-scale solidarity or unity of a number of people based on their memory of a long shared past of sacrifice, heroic actions, and devotion. So, what was there before these nation-states? There were multinational dynastic empires. If we break this phrase, multinational dynasty empires, it means many empires. People living in these empires belonged to different nationalities. They were governed by a king or queen from a dynasty or a royal lineage. For example, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Bourbon dynasty. The formation of nation-states was the result of a long-drawn process, the starting point of which was the French Revolution. The year of the Revolution was 1789. Thanks to the French Revolution, power was transferred from the monarchy to the people. Soon, ideas of la patrie, the fatherland, and la citoyenne, the citizen, came up. France had a constitution, a tricolor flag, equal rights for citizens, a national assembly, and an estates general elected by the common people, uniform laws for its citizens, and uniform systems of weights and measures. French became the common language of the nation. New hymns were composed, oaths taken, and martyrs commemorated in the name of the nation. Educated middle classes and students in different parts of Europe were inspired by these events and set up Jacobin clubs. The French Revolution ultimately ended with the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. After that, the military of France happened to invade other countries of Europe like Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy. They wished to liberate the people of Europe from despotism, in the belief that they were destined to do so. In the territories captured, for example in the Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany, Napoleon introduced the Napoleonic Code. The Napoleonic Code was introduced in 1804. It was a uniform civil code which granted privileges to all his citizenry. It said that all men were equal, all would be treated equally before law, all propertied men would have a right to property. Administrative divisions were simplified. The European system of feudalism ended. Farmers became free from serfdom and manorial or feudal dues. Guild restrictions were taken away. Transport and communication were improved. However, what were the terms and conditions applied? Political freedom was never granted. People of captured areas had to pay higher taxes. Censorship was introduced. Conscription or military enlistment was made compulsory. So, the end result was that people in general were still very dissatisfied. The inhabitants of Brussels, Mainz, Milan, and Warsaw had thought that Napoleonic France would finally give them liberty. In the 19th century, this dream was brutally smashed. This disappointment is symbolically represented in the planting of the Tree of Liberty in Zweibrücken, Germany. The plaque fixed to the Tree of Liberty reads, "Take freedom and equality from us, the model of humanity." In our next discussion, we will shift our focus from France and the western part of Europe and go to Eastern and Central Europe. We will try to find out how nationalism developed there. Eastern and Central Europe were divided into countries like Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. There were many kingdoms, duchies, and cantons. Each of these had a king who was autocratic. He had people of different languages and ethnicities living within his territories. An ideal example of this was the Habsburg Empire that ruled over Austria and Hungary. The empire included the Alpine regions, the Tyrol, Austria, and the Sudetenland. as well as Bohemia. People living here spoke German, Magyar, Polish, Bohemian, Slovak, Slovene, Croat, and Romani, etc. The only common thing about these places was that each one was living under a common emperor. Here, unlike the case of France, the virus of nationalism was sowed via social and political forces. Society here was divided into two classes, the aristocracy and the commoners or peasants. Aristocracy, or the upper classes, had the following in common. They had a common way of life, they had estates in the country, townhouses, they spoke French, and the families were connected by marital ties. In numbers, they were relatively small. In the group of commoners, there were tenants and small owners. They formed the majority and had no political rights. Their work was to till the land of the aristocrats as serfs. Now, with the expansion of trade and industry, a third class was also added. This third class had two divisions, workers and a middle class consisting of industrialists, businessmen and professionals. It was this educated middle class that came up with the ideal of liberal nationalism. Let us now find out what liberal nationalism is. Liberalism comes from the Latin word liber. Liber means free. In the early 19th century, middle classes demanded a number of rights. These were individual freedom, equality before law, fall of autocracy, universal suffrage, destruction of clerical privileges, government by consent, constitution, representative government through parliament, inviolability of private property, freedom of markets, removal of state-imposed tariff barriers on goods for better movement of goods and capital, uniform weights and measures, a standard currency, improved transport and communication. The aim was to get a unified economic territory. The best example of this was seen in Germany. Germany was divided into a confederation of 39 states. Each state had its own currency, its own weights and measures. So, a merchant traveling in 1833 from Habsburg to Nuremberg had to pass through 11 custom barriers and pay. Liberal nationalism pushed for a united economic territory. An ideal example of this was the Zollverein. Now, what was the Zollverein? It was a customs union set up in the year 1834 under the initiative of Prussia. All German states were party to it. The union had abolished tariff barriers. Instead of 30, people now had to pay only 2 tariffs. Till now, we have discussed the spread of nationalism in France and Central and East Europe. We will continue our discussion on nationalism in Europe over our next few videos. Till then, goodbye.